everyone and welcome! Every time Riot releases a new dev diary, I always have to add something to it. And today will be no different, because today I actually have something to add on that matter. The newly released dev diary featured Greg Street, also known as Ghostcrawler, and he talked about successful champions and what makes them successful after their release. This is a topic which I have talked about before, and not in a single video. In fact, there are about 4 or 5 different videos talking about specific champions and why they are popular. So naturally I was interested in what the developers themselves have to say. Ghostcrawler started by saying that win ratio is not the only factor that dictates how successful a champion is. And although I know a lot of you play competitively and all you care about are numbers, I'll show you exactly why win ratio doesn't make a champion popular. Ghostcrawler then continued by revealing 5 pillars, as he called them, that play a big part in the success of an individual champion.
But there are 5 pillars that we treat as the most important. These are satisfying to play, a resonant theme, being able to express your skill on the champion, fair to play against, and then the champion also has to be unique.
Although he talked about what each pillar means, I want to go one step further and I want to show you each pillar in game. That way you'll see exactly what a successful champion looks like. Let's start with satisfying to play. He mentioned that champions in this category just feel right. And he mentioned Jinx and her W or Zap as an ability that feels great to use. When you press it, you have the wind up that adds to its power. Then it fires a quick bolt. You see the chunk of health disappearing pretty quickly. And on top of that, you have the satisfying sound. But I am not a big Jinx player, so instead I would like to present you other options. There is one champion that is so satisfying to play that pretty much everyone agreed that he may as well be the most satisfying champion to play. Of course, I am talking about Jhin. If you want to play a champion that just feels right, you have to play Jhin. Every time you manage to throw a grenade that kills 3 minions and hits a champion, that is satisfying. Every time you make someone step into your trap and root them for the explosion, that is satisfying. Every time you root someone before an engage for easy kills for your team, that is satisfying and game changing. And then comes his ultimate. 3 easy shots followed by a shot that can take down 50% of someone's health. Everything you do as Jhin is satisfying. From watching chunks of health disappear to listening to the booming sound of your 4th shot, followed by the satisfying sound of reloading. And Jhin is not alone in this state. There are more champions people love to play for the feel, even if they are horrible with them. Lee Sin is another one. There are people which are awful with him, me included. And yet we play him anyway because it feels so good to land a good Q for an execute on a champion during the early game. His W and E are just flashy abilities that look good, but they won't bring you the satisfaction of a good kick or Q. And then there are champions that have one glorious moment so good it is worth picking them for it. Prime example of this is Darius. Although his Q alone is pretty satisfying to land, it is nothing compared to executing someone with his ultimate, let alone executing the entire team in a streak. But this can go to such an extent that people may pick straight up bad builds for the glorious satisfying feel. AP Pantheon may be awful, but man does it feel good to one-shot someone with his ultimate. Very often it is the sound that makes things satisfying, and here's a short compilation to demonstrate that point. The next pillar Ghostcrawler mentioned is Resonant theme. This ties to the visual or the story of a certain champion. From personal experience, I can confirm that this is how mains are born outside of competitive play. Very often people pick their mains based on their looks and who they are. Let's be honest for a second. Yasuo wouldn't be nearly as popular as he is if he wasn't a badass half-naked samurai. Imagine if he looked like Xin Zhao, for example. The same pose, wielding spear, but with Yasuo's abilities. He would have the dash, a quick strike with his spear, and even wind wall and his ultimate. And yet he wouldn't feel the same. Very often it is the looks that sell the champion, and a Blade Master will always be more popular than a spearman. Ghostcrawler mentioned Ivern in this category. When they worked on Ivern, they knew he wouldn't be super popular, but they knew he felt exactly the way he should. His entire theme, story, animations, and even his unique gameplay are tied into one goofy bundle. And as long as there would be people who would love playing him, he would be a successful champion. To give you more examples, look at Kindred. They may not be the best champion in League according to the numbers, but when you play them you feel like death approaching for the target you chose. Or Rengar. Rengar's win rate keeps changing, but people keep playing him because he feels like a hunter. As long as you know where the enemy is, they are the prey and you are the hunter. Then we have the pillar that is based around pure gameplay the most. Skill expression. To easily explain this, the best champions are those that can be played by anyone at any level and be viable. Champions that are very basic usually don't offer anything to high level players. High level players usually look for the best burst damage, great roaming, unavoidable ganks. Things that can be achieved by playing complicated champions perfectly. The reason why complicated champions are usually the best is because of balancing. If you have a simple champion like Amumu, it is very easy to tune his health or AP scaling to make him balanced. If he does too much damage with his ultimate, scale it down. If he is too squishy and he can't even ult, give him more health. The simpler the champion is, the easier it is to balance him. But what if a champion has skill shots? Zed is an excellent example of how hard it can be to balance a champion. Let's look at his Q for example. You can't make it strong because you could poke with it, and because it costs energy you could poke with it in lane infinitely. If you make it too weak it could become worthless. If you make it balanced you may still break it because with his shadow he can hit it twice. If you make it too weak with one shuriken but decent with two shurikens, it would still be unreliable and worthless. On top of that, it is a skill shot, so there has to be a reward for landing it. In other words, it has to deal a little bit more damage. Otherwise it could have been just a targeted spell. And that is just his Q. In reality, you also have to balance his W scaling. E, which again he can cast twice. In this case, Riot decided it can't stack, otherwise it would be broken. And all of this has to fit into his ultimate. And because his ultimate scales from his overall damage, a single overtuned spell can break the entire champion. So a great champion is the one that deals decent damage if you do a simple combo, but can carry the game if he is in the hands of a pro. All while maintaining weaknesses, so the champion can be countered. This ties to the next pillar, which is fairness. There are examples when certain champions were reworked because they weren't fair. And right now, I don't think there is a single champion in League that wouldn't have a weakness or a form of counterplay. Quite some time ago I even made a video about this. I am not sure if I recommend watching it because it is old, but the contents of that video are still true. Champions like Yasuo are worthless if they don't get an early kill. However, it is very easy to get a kill with them because they are very offensively mobile. A lot of people don't realize that Yasuo can mostly only jump forward, making it insanely easy to gank him from a side. Don't sneak behind him or he will dash through you, but get him from a side. When you look at powerful melee champions like Darius or Olaf, they lack range. As long as you can slowly poke them from a safe distance and avoid their attacks when they try to get you, you win. When you look at powerful mages, you may notice that almost none of them are mobile. And those that are mobile usually slowly poke you out of lane. If they are not mobile, wait for a gank. If they are, it is all in your hands. Don't get poked and poke them back. There are two champions that used to have no weaknesses at all. Both of them are now reworked. LeBlanc used to have an instant burst that would kill anyone. Combined with her mobility, she was unstoppable. And Rengar, who could literally one-shot an AD carry without warning. Now, after the rework, you know when he's coming, so if you are fast enough, you can save your carries. Every champion has a weakness, you just have to look for it. The easiest way to learn the weaknesses of your most hated champion is to play him yourself. Whenever you die, just figure out why you died and you may realize the weakness. And the last pillar Ghostcrawler mentioned is uniqueness. And this is something I talked about many times before. League is in a state where Riot has to constantly innovate. They constantly have to make new unique champions that break the game for everyone. Otherwise, people will be stuck playing the same game and eventually get bored. The first time I seriously talked about this was with the release of Bard 2 years ago. Bard was the first champion that aimed at breaking the meta. The original concept was to have a champion that journeys around the map, breaking the concept of everyone being stuck in lane for the first 15 minutes. While this didn't work exactly as planned, it was the first step toward breaking the game. As time went by, every game became more and more unique. Mordekaiser started taming dragons, Kindred started contesting for jungle camps, Ivern started invading level 1, Zilean started giving free levels. Riot made sure every new and reworked champion was somehow unique and brought something special into the game. Ghostcrawler then transitioned into the artistic style of champions. He mentioned that they have to make every champion look different so you can always tell them apart in game, even if they have a skin. Mostly they focus on the champion's silhouette. This is something I also talked about in a previous video. But more importantly, I want to mention a game I made quite some time ago. I made a game on YouTube where you can try and guess champions based on their silhouettes. If you wanna see how good Riot is at this task, go and watch that video. And that is pretty much all I wanted to show you. If you want to hear Ghostcrawler himself talking about champion design, you can go and watch the original Dev Diary. He also mentioned few outdated champions like Nunu and Morgana, and he talked about why they can stand up against new champions. That is something you may be interested in. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, feel free to rate it however you want and subscribe for some lore. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Discord if you'd like to chat. Thank you all so much for being here and for your support. You know I really appreciate it. And as always, thank you come again.